Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for attending this session entitled Hydrogen Rainbow, Improving Low-Carbon Hydrogen Potential for a Just Energy Transition. So that's quite a menu, and I'm lucky to have with me three super speakers that I will start introducing. On my right, I have Norbert Röttgen. Did I pronounce it correctly? Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Member of the Bundestag since, I think, 1994? Yeah, exactly. Member of the Committee of Foreign Affairs that you chaired also for several years. And former Federal Minister for Environment, Nature, Conservation and Nuclear Safety from 2009 to 2012. Wonderful. Thank you for being here. On my left, immediate left, I have Rinaldo Brutocco. Brutocco? Yeah. Brutocco. A serial entrepreneur based in California and currently CEO of H2 Clipper, a hydrogen delivery company via dirigible. Sorry, I find it very difficult to say dirigeable in English. Dirigible.
Pipelines also.
And?
Pipelines.
And pipelines too, absolutely, you're right. And not only are you currently working in hydrogen, but also a great believer and environmentalist. So thank you for being here. And Ali Essassi, thank you for being here with us today, Chairman of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development from the House of Commons of Canada, where you are a Member of Parliament since, I think, 2015. And also here to talk about the numerous initiatives that are developed in Canada regarding hydrogen. So let's kick off. Thank you for everyone for being here, online and on site. Let's start with Hydrogen Rainbow. Who's going to start? What should we, because I'm assuming most of us today, you know, we're all talking about green hydrogen, but, you know, when is green hydrogen really going to take off? And should we, in the meanwhile, believe in blue hydrogen, pink hydrogen? Norbert, as a former environment minister who has thought a lot about hydrogen at the time, what's your perspective?
So thank you, first of all, for introducing me and us, and thank you for having me. So I think the criterion, of course, is that hydrogen has to serve as a transition to a zero carbon energy supply. And for that reason, I would say it makes sense only to talk about green hydrogen. A gray, black, even blue comes with a carbon footprint. And what we need is zero carbon economy, and particularly an energy system. So what really has the strategic importance, and what we have to develop and has to become a business case in order to be successful, is green hydrogen.
Okay, well, I'm assuming, Rinaldo, you are going to also be in agreement?
Yeah, I think it's the future's green. I mean, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, all the oil exporting countries have all decided they're going to do green hydrogen because that's the market of the future. So their export fuel product will be green hydrogen ultimately. But no, I think the biggest issue in terms of the colors of hydrogen is that in France, you just had this huge discovery of white hydrogen. So white hydrogen is when you have it from a natural purpose that no one put any carbon into, so that would be a carbon-free one. Green hydrogen, of course, is when you make it from a renewable energy. And here's a number you can use to understand this. Approximately 70% or more of the cost of making a kilogram of hydrogen is the electricity that you have to use. So if you go to a place where electricity is really cheap, Scotland, for example, where there's tons of wind and where they have lots of water, you can electrolyze hydrogen and you can produce it at prices competitive today once the plant gets built with fossil fuels. And you've got about 30 of those plants that are under construction or on the drawing boards. And as you and I were saying earlier, she pointed out that many of those are still waiting for the financial hurdle.
Investment decision, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And in any infant industry, which we are, that will always be a tendency to hold us back. I also think that the entrenched economic forces of the fossil fuel industry, which have a very big vested interest in so-called gray or black hydrogen, which is when you have the carbon up in the air, or blue hydrogen, where you capture capture it and try to dispose of it underground or otherwise. Those forces will try to push the delay of green hydrogen, but I think they won't be successful in the long run. So yes, we're going to go green. I couldn't agree more with Norbert.
What about you, Ali? I understand that in Canada also, I mean, you've started green initiatives. So do you too, you're jumping straight into green and no blue?
No, I wouldn't say that's
maybe your microphone.
necessarily the case. As you know, we've been at this for...
I think it's for the
sorry.
those people online.
Apologies. So yes, I think preferably it would be green, but we're experimenting with a number of different things. The reason why green is absolutely necessary is because we recognize full well that if our countries do want to make the transition, that is the only option available. But that's not to say that the various experiments that are going on around the world aren't helping us in that particular endeavor. But in Canada, I think there's several things that are of note. First of all, when it comes to the feedstock, I think we do have somewhat of an advantage because the abundance of water, whether it be fresh or not. There's also the issue of electricity. Hydroelectricity is very much in abundance in Canada as well. So for that reason, we did come up with a new strategy in the year 2020. And we currently actually have the largest actually production of green hydrogen, which is taking place at Air Liquide, which is in Quebec. And they are the ones that have the largest proton exchange membrane as well. So I think we're all endeavoring to get to the same place, but it will require, first of all, there are a number of impediments, but it will require further collaboration.
It's interesting this is Canada and Germany, because Canada and Germany just entered into an accord in Nova Scotia, where Germany has agreed to buy 100% of the output from a green hydrogen plant being built in Nova Scotia by the Canadians using natural energy. So it's interesting you two are here, because that just happened a couple months ago.
Yes, the market is about supply and demand. And he is a supplier, we are demanding it and consuming it. Yes, very good. And this shows that there is a market in emergence. It's not there yet, I would say, but there are the first appearances.
So yeah, that's a great point. So we have what's the time frame? How close for us, consumers, citizens?
Time frame. So, perhaps we will discuss on this. I think there are different stages in the development, and of course these constitute then the time frame we are expecting. I would say what we just discussed is stage one, where you have a low-cost production area like Canada, low-cost renewable energy, or very favorable renewable energy conditions, which lead to low-cost green hydrogen. And then you have a destination, a country of consumption with high energy prices, and you have targeted, for example, industry, consumers. So it's not households at this stage, but it's particular specific consumers, for example, industry. And this is a start and can be multiplied with different countries. So Morocco and Scotland was already mentioned. So this is the starting point, which has to be scaled up. And then we will have this stage 2 or 3, perhaps 2 or 3, where we have the short distance supply, which is then pipeline bound, and I would say perhaps 10 years or so, where we can expect to have a pipeline bound hydrogen supply and consumption system.
Do you agree that this first stage is which industries should benefit, if it's the right word, from green hydrogen,
Yeah, just real quick. So the first green hydrogen plant that's going to come online is in Neom, Saudi Arabia. And because there's a worldwide shortage of fertilizer made worse by the Ukraine war, that's going to be 100% devoted to using green hydrogen to make ammonia. So even though green hydrogen is going to be produced in 18 months, the consumer is going to be seeing it in the terms of ammonia for a fertilizer. But in terms of the length of time, we just completed a test bed rig that basically tests for hydrogen transport by pipeline. And we're working with the state of California to distribute it throughout the state. So I think it will be 1 mile at a time. Not unlike the way gas stations got built by Rockefeller originally, the first one, then the second, then the third, and you don't try and build a transcontinental highway system until you start building the gas stations. California has approximately 70 gas stations currently. We have 16,000 hydrogen vehicles, passenger. We have about 60,000 diesel trucks in Southern California alone, which are going to be driven off the road, basically. So there's a number of applications. Switzerland's already running diesel trucks, hydrogen trucks for diesels. So and Canada has been very aggressively moving into it too.
Absolutely. So far, we've been moving most aggressively with respect to vehicles and transportation. But another thing I wanted to also add is this isn't just a problem of demand and supply. I think there's the business case and scaling up, but there's also the question of standardization. And I think the agreement between Canada and Germany, as well as an agreement that we entered into, the first one we entered into with the Netherlands, is all about coming up with standards and coming up with infrastructure, as was rightly alluded to. So there are many aspects, many dimensions to this if we are going to make that a smooth transition, if you will.
And just picking up, I was interested when you were talking, Norbert, where you said, so the first stage would be long distance in terms of, the green hydrogen production and then, bringing it to, and then the second stage would be probably shorter distance with the pipelines. Alors, Rinaldo, you do both with the dirigibles and the pipelines. So which one do you prefer? Which has the most potential?
I think the pipeline's coming first. Because, because there's already this massive pipeline network, and people don't want to stop selling methane until the customer goes away. So we can retrofit one of those pipes, any of those pipes, to carry hydrogen simultaneously with carrying the existing methane. So it gives you a conversion time, which is really desirable for the European backbone. And that's what California is going to be doing. California is definitely going to be going pipeline first. The long distance will come over time, but it's, again, we're a midstream company, so our job is to move molecules. And one of the things I want to say that's really important to get into is there is often a dichotomy that people think will hold up hydrogen, which I'd like to pierce, and that is what's called the electrons versus the molecules argument. And what's clear is it's both. So we do need battery electric vehicles. That's not going to go away. And we need molecular hydrogen vehicles as well. And we need, in the case of hard-to-abate sectors, steel, cement, industrial, got to be hydrogen because you can't do it with batteries. So there's these, it's going to take both, sort of like an all-of-the-above approach. And my guess is that as private industry realizes how economic it is, World Energy in Canada is one of our associates in California, actually, with the pipeline that they already own all the way to Long Beach. So the idea that somebody like a Canadian company, World Energy, could become a major player in their building the plant in Nova Scotia overnight is very, very important because it means private industry seeing where the openings are. And that's what accelerates change. It won't because the government mandates it. All our government, as Norbert was asking me earlier, government of the United States has just put out $7.5 billion just for planning money to 7 hydrogen hubs, of which I'm one of them in California. Well, it's to put that kind of money out just to plan how we're going to do this is an expression of the commitment of the Biden administration, which I think will outlive the Biden administration.
So part of the title here of the session is improving low carbon hydrogen potential. As we were saying, so you guys want to focus on green hydrogen, okay? But then, as we said, there are not that many financial investment decisions that have been made. We're still waiting for a lot. So what needs to happen for this to really become a reality, for green hydrogen to get going, because currently otherwise we're not, with the number of projects that are announced, we're still not on the trajectory, sorry. So Norbert, how can Europe, for example, who has been, pioneering on many energy issues. What can Europe do, and what can Germany, and how can Germany push?
Yeah, and perhaps briefly connect in answering the question, connecting to the previous one, I think the sequencing might be different where it takes place. So speaking of Germany, I would say certainly the shipping is before the pipeline. But where you have, but Spain might be different. Spain has a good environment, natural environment for producing renewable energy at a low cost, and they can of course produce hydrogen for their own consumption. For Germany, I would say what we have to do is start with hydrogen partnerships, as already mentioned, between Canada and Germany, and between Namibia and Germany and other countries, where our interest is to ensure preferably private investment in the other country, in the country of production, and then create a reliable partnership in importing hydrogen from these countries. So I think this is for us an important point, which indicates that hydrogen will have a geo-economic and geopolitical impact. It's really changing the global energy landscape, bringing additional players into the market, into the emerging market, and from the consumer perspective, it's an instrument for diversification, and by this contributing to energy security. But it will start with these from the German perspective, because we have 50% of renewable electricity production so far, but of course we need it for our electricity. So for us it will be the start with long-distance partnerships and scaling up.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned the pipelines, even in Germany, is once you get it to your shore, you have to distribute it. Yeah. And so why would you abandon and strand an asset, pipeline network, which is huge, and walk away from it? Why not just reuse it, redeploy it? And so I think that once you get it to your shore, whether you make it in Hamburg or not, and I realize there's a question whether you want to do that with the wind.
But how do you bring it to the industrial center in the Ruhrgebiet, for example, in North Rhine-Westphalia? It will not be by pipeline, I suppose.
Well, first of all, right now the technology, you can go up to 500 miles, which is what, 600 and some kilometers, without repressurizing. And when you repressurize, you can go up to over 1,000. So you could get anywhere in Germany from Hamburg, basically. And one of the things about the German plan, which I'll send you a copy of my comments on, they were not going to have hydrogen delivered for 7 years after they got it to Hamburg. They were going to have it delivered down in the Ruhr, and that ain't going to work. So what we're saying is that if you repurpose pipelines, wherever you get it from, overseas or domestic, you're going to have to move it to the industry. And I don't think, you can't do it by truck because it's just not economic. The gas is not economic. There's a lot of movement now in the world of liquid hydrogen, and moving liquid hydrogen by truck is far more economic, but it's still a challenge if you're going to try to compete with other forms of electricity.
So if we go back to the last part, which is the just energy transition, and what you were saying, Norbert, about producing in those, I would say maybe remote countries compared to us here as we are in France, some argue that it could be a new form of colonization. How would those countries benefit from that production capability, and how would they be able to develop if all the production goes abroad, goes to Europe, for example?
No, I didn't say that all the production goes abroad. But no, I think it's the contrary of colonization, because it's about the creation of an industry in these countries. It's about the creation of economic value, of exporting the economic value, and it's the European side that is becoming dependent on the delivery from countries like Namibia and others. So I think it's on the contrary, it's creating eye-level economic relationships, trade relationships, where it's really the exchange of supply and demand, where over time market prices will establish, and it will create a playing level field between these countries. So I'm optimistic about that, and don't see this colonization aspect.
Because some argue, first of all, there is a water challenge in those countries where, because it will require a great use of water. Others mention financing challenges. Others transporting green hydrogen. Well, I'd love to believe you that it will be a walk in the park, but and political stability.
Nothing's a walk in the park. No. Let's go.
We'd like it to be. We'd like it to be, and political stability. That could be because we know those big infrastructure projects, you need a lot of stability, you need visibility, you need, prices, you need a framework.
Yes.
And how can we ensure that this is going to happen? And I'm saying that for any country, it's not just for,
And I would say because this is creating an economic basis for all what you're saying. Stability, a legal framework, you have jobs creation. So I would say it's really injecting an economic viable substance in the relationship, where the European side is certainly not dominating.
But who's going to do that? Who's going to drive that? Is it business or politics or society? Because we're here for that at the forum.
I think it's business instigated by society, and ultimately politics will come along as well, and with good political leadership.
Politics are not going to drive it?
No, I don't think so. But I would go back to your north-south issue, the colonization issue. So if you're in Morocco, for example, where you can create electricity at 1.5 cents or one per kilowatt, okay, that means that you can create green hydrogen for around $4 a gallon of gas equivalent or less. Well, you're going to use that in Morocco instead of importing gallons of gas at $6. So automatically you improve every economy that can create hydrogen, because they won't be importing fossil fuels at extraordinarily high prices. And that's an extraordinary value to what we would call the north-south issue, or the colonization.
Sure, this would really happen.
Yeah, the science is irrefutable. We know exactly what a kilogram of hydrogen costs. If you tell me,
no, I'm not saying that. But would they really reduce fuel imports?
Absolutely, because they're going broke. The problem with fuel is it rises faster than the price of bananas. So in every country that has to rely on export of commodities, they're stuck paying more for their fossil fuel every year, and they can't ever catch up. Well, if all of a sudden you can knock the price of fossil fuels down, where it's not a monopolistic control of the energy system of the world, then you of course you're going to use it, because it's directly in your pocket immediately. And think of the cost you're saving by not having to put it on the ship that Norbert keeps talking about. You can use it right locally first.
Yeah, there's a big shipping industry in Germany, we need to promote it.
Also,
I'm not in any way affiliated with the shipping industry.
Maybe, Ali, do you want to tell us maybe those projects that are currently underway in Canada? Can you tell me how they work? Because currently we don't have that many up and running, operations with green hydrogen. What are the benefits, or what value are you currently, experiencing or seeing from those initiatives?
Well, first of all, given the scaling up challenges that we've all acknowledged, it's required a lot of government intervention and investment. That is something we've been very much committed to. But in addition to that, you're also seeing various provinces, because our system of government isn't just the federal government. We're also seeing subnational levels of government working more closely with each other as well, whether it be Newfoundland with BC, or whether it be BC with California as well. There are a lot of discussions that are going on there. But the benefit is, if I may, I think these are really the building blocks to build that momentum, which is so incredibly important for us to get there.
What government's doing is what they did with Silicon Valley. They're helping to create the market, but you can't do it by government alone. You got to eventually trigger it on its own economics, and then the private sector comes in. So what Canada's been doing is encouraging it. I mentioned the World Energy Plant in Nova Scotia. That's privately financed. 25% of the money came from Korea. South Korea. So you're talking about the private sector learning how to get into this, and people like Fortescue Metals, Andrew Forrest, actively trying to finance multiple plants around the world. It's going to happen not because government orders it, is my point. Government's going to trigger the initiative, the starting point, like it did in Silicon Valley, but then eventually business has to jump in, because it's just too massive, the capital requirement. You're talking $13 to $15 trillion required in the near term.
Do you agree, Norbert? Is that how it works? How the government can, or
Yes,
government,
yes,
or politics?
Yes, I agree.
Because you
So
overhaul the whole energy system in Germany at your time.
This, of course, requires politics and policy and governments, because it's a political decision. It's not a market-driven decision. It's a political decision that we have to transition to save our planet. So in the mid and long term, it's not a decision of today. For today, but we have to change today in order to preserve the living conditions on the planet. And this is typically political. And this has to be decided and has been decided. And then you need a framework, because out of this decision, business does not emerge immediately. It takes time. And this requires a framework which has to be reliable, and within the framework, and perhaps also within, on the basis of state aid and state support in the beginning, markets have to emerge. Otherwise, we will fail.
And so, how do we do that, Rinaldo?
Well, in California, we went to the government. We have a thing called Caltrans that controls all the highways and freeways and whatnot in California. And we said, so those freeways and highways go everywhere, and you want the trucks and the cars to run on hydrogen, and you want to get the plants out in Riverside to run on it. And you've got probably 15,000 forklifts that are already running on hydrogen in California. So, and 16,000 cars, and it looks to be like many thousands of trucks are coming online. So what you have to do is build the distribution network at the same time you're building the plant. So World Energy, who's doing the one in Canada, has one plant right now in Los Angeles where they're basically shipping hydrogen out, and they're broke ground on a second plant in Los Angeles, and they need a distribution system. So we went to Caltrans. And we said, if you give us the rights away, we'll find someone that wants to put in the pipeline. And once we give them the pipeline, they'll distribute it along the freeway system, and that's how you will get it to the customer. Now, you're not going to build the entire freeway system in California overnight, but you're going to go from that first plant in Los Angeles, which is 13 miles to Long Beach, and you're going to put it there first. That's where the first pipe is going to go, I think.
Soap.
No, so then it's an iterative process. In other words, so what has to happen is you start with what's available today. So the government controls the highways. In California, they're not allowed to tax hydrogen or electric cars. So the roads are being used more, but they're having less revenue. So it was a very simple sale to the state of California to say, would you like to get some revenue? We'll give you 5 cents a kilogram if you just let us use it right away. Well, all of a sudden, and we proposed something similar for the Germans on the Autobahn. Revenue source.
Well, are there other countries than California that, regions or
fair countries,
but it's the size of a country, but that promote green hydrogen for cars? Because my understanding is that maybe in Europe we have more of a view on it's focused really for industry, and hard to abate industries, and well, that's where also we have a bit of blue hydrogen for hard to abate.
Yeah, Japan. Japan has clearly got a hydrogen infrastructure for cars. And the trucks, as you know, are already in Switzerland, and some of the best hydrogen trucks are coming out of Volvo, Mercedes, which has a joint venture.
But then some argue that there's such an energy consumption to develop or to produce hydrogen that we have to. Il y a des arbitrages à faire. You know, you have allocations, and maybe hard to abate are more of a priority than cars, where you have EVs, for example.
Let's just test that assumption.
And just before you answer. In the room, if you have any questions, please raise your hand so that we can start preparing for your questions.
Yeah. So one of the assumptions that you just embedded there, we cannot get. It takes over 4 years to get a permit to put wind energy on the grid in America, and it's growing longer every day because we don't have the capacity. That same wind energy is getting what's called curtailed, means shut off. So the wind's blowing, the windmills are there. We can't use the electricity. You take that same electricity and you put it into hydrogen, now you can move it, and you can use it. So it isn't a trade-off where you have to give up electricity. It's how you tap more electricity quicker.
Yes.
Because, see, hydrogen is...
You have to be able to do that because, as you say yourself, getting permits or license for, at least in France, for, windmills or solar parks, I mean, it takes ages.
Yeah, but can you imagine if it took ages and then you had to add another 5 years to get it on the grid? In other words, it's ages plus ages, so we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
It is ages plus ages.
Well,
that's why it's a real question on how do we do this green energy ecosystem and whole.
Well, start where Norbert started. I mean, look, you don't have a choice. Start with that. So no, I mean you don't. I mean, the planet's going to be fine. The question is what the biosphere is going to be like and how inhabitable it's going to be. So if you have no choice, the faster you move, the more money you will save and make, and the quicker you can abate what is. Here's this very simple example. In every business in the world that I know of, you open a restaurant in France. Do you have to pay to have your garbage hauled away? Yes. It's an externality. Okay? If you run a fossil fuel plant and you put the CO2 in the air, do you pay for it? No. Okay? So you have a major externality not being covered by the company creating the problem. And so you have to abate. And the only way to do that is to switch fuel systems. It's not an option. So we go as fast as we can. If people want it to go faster, it will. And if they want to drag their feet, it will. And it's a political decision, as Norbert said.
Yes, and will become very expensive.
Yes, the expense is worse every day.
Hence dragging the feet. Do we have any questions in the audience? Ah, wonderful. Oh, you have a microphone.
I don't know.
Oh, I think it's working.
Perfect. Okay. My name is Marissa. I'm from Sciences Po Lille, but I grew up in Minnesota, just on the border with Canada. I'd like to address the water challenges that need to be discussed and solved in order for green hydrogen to begin to be a sustainable source, specifically in Canada and Nova Scotia. So I suppose this is also a question for Germany if there is this agreement in Nova Scotia. So the Indigenous and POC populations there currently do not have clean water sources. So I am wondering if Germany is acknowledging these inequalities in these communities during the process of green hydrogen production, and then what steps are being taken to make sure that the communities there are the state is being held responsible and accountable for unclean water sources.
Thank you. I'll let maybe Ali, maybe just remind maybe of the context for the whole.
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. It's a very sophisticated question. To the extent, as you know, for our government, providing clean water to Indigenous communities has always been a top priority. But insofar as Nova Scotia is concerned, and this could very well just be me, but I don't think that challenge actually exists in Nova Scotia. It does in other parts of the country, but to the best of my knowledge, it's not the case in Nova Scotia. But I stand to be corrected if...
I think there's another question. I can't see very well, to be honest, me. Over there. Okay.
Yeah, hello. Hi, my name is Max Hatzelt. I'm from GIZ, the German implementation agency for international development cooperation all over the world. I have to keep putting the finger into the wound of, eye-level partnerships and hydrogen production internationally, and I'm very happy that, Aurelia, this was supposed to be a question, but you kind of already asked my question, but now it's more of an intervention, and I really commend the panel's optimism when it comes to this high-level partnerships with countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, for hydrogen production. But I really don't think that if we do not have a political strategy to really implement this, this is not going to happen. This is going to be green colonialism. This is going to be the resource curse 2.0. Why should green hydrogen production in Namibia be any different for the Namibian economy than as was oil and gas for the economy of Nigeria, as was oil and gas for the economy of Angola? So, well, kind of a little bit of the question there would be, so do you have any strategies to, really have partnerships at eye level, really address all the challenges and that arise in the countries, and really, you know, foster not only a real partnership, but also manage the expectations. You know, the expectations of these communities when green hydrogen investment comes are, we're going to get so many jobs, it's going to be all hunky-dory. And, you know, when these expectations are not met, then, you know, the conflict arises. And this is going to be a significant issue. And please take it from someone who's been working on this for 15 years. And please also, you know, listen to the partner countries, listen to the civil society in the partner countries. And listen to, you know, the development cooperation community who has been dealing with resource curves and with fragility and with problems with economies for decades.
Thank you.
So yeah, not really a question, but thank you.
But I think Ronaldo.
Yeah, so this is a very key distinction. Whenever you're talking about a massive technological shift, you have to be careful you don't define the question by the history of the technology that's being displaced. So for give you an example, if you take Namibia or any oil exporting country that's been colonized by the export of oil, the reason they had to continue importing gasoline is because they didn't have refineries that they could take their oil and turn into gasoline. So they had to import gasoline, and they exported oil to do it. It's not true with hydrogen, because if you've got hydrogen and you create it locally, you can get something as cheap as a $10,000 fuel cell, and you can build an electricity plant. And like personal computers, which replaced mainframes, you can daisy chain an unlimited number of fuel cells, which are off the shelf now and getting cheaper by the day. I've driven a hydrogen car for 5 years now, which has a very small little fuel cell in it that's smaller than the size of your back. So you don't have a reason now to export the hydrogen and not use it locally for electricity, because it turns itself directly into electricity once you've made it. That's not true with oil. So it's a very, very different technology. I just want to point that out. And if you want, after the session, we could even go through some of what the numbers are that relate to that, because when people didn't see personal computers coming, they didn't understand that you could daisy chain them, and they were more efficient together, and we call it a server farm now. So I was running a computer company in 1977, Mainframe Burroughs Computers, and I said, oh my God, these guys, they're going to change the world of technology. And of course, every single company in the world that was in the computer business back in 1978 is now out of business, with the exception of IBM, who isn't a computer company anymore. They're a software company. So I just want to point out that the technology that you're talking about is so different from fossil fuel that you got to be careful how you evaluate it. And there's no reason to ship the electricity out if you're not going to use it locally.
I think Norbert wanted to also say
Yes, and so I'm a politician, a member of parliament from the opposition. You are working with GIZ, so in a way for the government. So I suppose you have not for the you are a federal employee working for a federal institution and working on this. So I suppose you have as clearly read the federal government strategy as I have done. So there is a strategy. I perhaps have some criticism of the implementation and the slowness of the implementation, but I think you can't deny the existence of a strategy and how they are doing that. And the second point is there is a completely different technology with implication very differently, and it does not stretch my ability of imagination to envisage a partnership between Germany and Namibia, because I can't see any government in Germany who is intended on colonizing Namibia, but we are intended, and I say this again as an opposition politician, that this government, which I am opposing fundamentally and politically, wants to have a real partnership. And there is no intention of colonization, and we trust that Namibia is able to engage and embrace such a partnership on its side. So I think there is no real substance for being so pessimistic and so dragged to the past. I think we can learn our historic lessons and can do better, and there is any intention there.
I think we have a question there. Go ahead, sir.
Please, instead of thinking about colonialism, think about how do you avoid political instability, how do you avoid incompetence, and how do you avoid corruption? because those are the things that drag down many of these countries that he referred to, rather than the question of colonialism. Today, we have very clear rules and we can have a fair deal. We can have a fair division of the profits and everything else. And as you mentioned, Congressman Röttgen, it's a question of, it's a business deal where you can have a business development in a place as remote as Namibia, and then through the proper transportation channels, get it at the right price to the place where it's going to be consumed, which is in Germany, and therefore everybody wins, rather than thinking about colonialism. Huh?
Thank you for this. Elad, I think we have a question just behind you, sir. Can you give the microphone to them?
I'll go.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, sorry. It's true. Sorry, you were waiting for us some time.
I'm taking the conversation just slightly different, in a different direction. And I mean, you all know what you're talking about really, really well. And it's interesting to sit here and hear you talk about this. What is, in your opinion, the role of the public at large of understanding the need for this transition and understanding this option of transition as the solution? And if you think the public needs to be brought on, where do you think they are in terms of their awareness of this solution?
First of all, it does take well, Norbert said it a while ago that the decision to move into a different form of energy is a political decision based on our realization as a culture that we're on a non-survivable path. And it's not like some distant path. The way the public is becoming aware of this is by watching the news every day with one catastrophic event after the other, you know, from flooding to drought to hurricanes. I mean, Acapulco just got wiped out with a Category 5 hurricane. It's never happened in the history of the nation. And we could go on with these examples endlessly. I've got many, many slides. So the point is that the public has got to realize it has no choice. We can't go ostrich on this. We have to change. And if we have to change, it needs to be engaged in that change. Because if the public doesn't push on it, it'll go a lot slower. It goes a lot slower, more catastrophic damage. Try to get a house insured in Florida or in California at this point.
We have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to leave Ali and then Norbert.
Again, great question. First of all, let me say that I think it's fair to say that this is going to move in fits and bursts. Because we're going to have to talk to the private sector, we're going to have to talk to NGOs. It's going to take some time before we get this right, and the momentum actually builds. But to the point that was made, yes, individuals and consumers will play a very big part in this. We can't be ostriches, and it was, as was rightly pointed out, it's not just the public, it's also political parties in our midst. For example, I can tell you about the Conservative Party in Canada, which doesn't even agree that we have a problem insofar as the environment is concerned. So this is going to be a transition that's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of fine-tuning, but it's really going to require all of us, whether private entities, governments, consumers, to really make sure that we make it there. Thank you.
Norbert, do you want to add something?
Very briefly, I think there is an overwhelming public awareness of the necessity to adapt and to change our lifestyle. I think this is there. I perhaps want to pick up one element of the previous speaker, and this is expectation management. I think we should be careful. Hydrogen is not the solution. It's part of the solution. And we should be careful with our expectation management. And what is essential, absolutely essential, is that this transition, it will not be done by wishful thinking. It's a hard challenge to be accomplished, to change the entire system of an economy which was based on which was fossil based, and to really systemically transfer this system. This is unprecedented. Has never been done before in history. So this is a huge challenge, and we should really concentrate and focus on doing it in the quickest and best way we can do. And I think, also speaking of my country, we have not managed well in the last 1 or 2 years, and this has caused a backlash, which is a public backlash, raising the questions: is it bearable in terms of costs? Does it destroy more than create? So this is a high responsibility we have to really take seriously, and better than we have done in the past.
Okay, and I'm very sorry because the time is out, but if you want to come and ask more questions to our speakers, please do, because I'm afraid we're going to have to leave the room for the next ones. But thank you very much, everyone. I think we have a realistic but optimistic conclusion. Thank you.